The sexual miseducation of black men in America. It explores and explains the psychological, emotional, behavioral, and relational impact that our sexual conditioning has had on us as black men. For far too long, we have allowed one of the smallest organs on our body to have the most control over our lives. In this book, we will explore the impact that our sexual miseducation has had on every part of our lives as black men. We will re-educate the next generation of men on how to value themselves by teaching them real ways of measuring their manhood and combating the notion that their manhood is based on the number of women that they sleep with or how well they perform in the bedroom. The sexual miseducation of black men in America will help parents in our community understand what it will take to grow their prince into the position of king. We will assist black men with overcoming one of the biggest struggles that we are faced with. That is the temptation of casual and meaningless sex. This alone has stopped millions of us from living up to our full potential. The sexual miseducation of black men in America. It's coming.
And mainly the unhealthy sexual habits that we learn, the unhealthy sexual lessons that we learn as black men. A lot of it affects us in so many different ways, psychologically, behaviorally, emotionally.
The act of sex in, 5th or 6th grade in health class, they start to talk to you about what sex is.
I tell her he loved her when he didn't really love her, right? And so what I took from that was, I'm never going to say those words unless I mean it.
End up being with this chick. She might just be a one-nighter and that's it. So we don't get out that stage until we like older. I mean, it's sad, but it's realistic.
It's almost like slowly pushing all the other people out, because at one time we all have multiple chicks here, there, and other way.
He didn't explain nothing or nothing. He just stopped hitting her up on that regard, stopped answering what she requested, and she kind of went off on him. And he was like, "Oh no, I got into a relationship, so I just didn't, it wasn't really appropriate." But she was like, "Well, you could have told me."
All right. Here we go. Good evening, fellas. How y'all doing? How y'all doing this evening?
All right, doing all right.
Doing good.
All right, and good evening to anybody that's watching. Welcome to the discussion around the sexual miseducation of black men in America. My name is A.B. Bracewell. I'm a therapist and an author of this upcoming book, The Sexual Miseducation of Black Men in America. And tonight we're going to be talking about the hurt we cause. Just to give a quick synopsis of what the book is about and what this discussion is about. As black men in our community, it's my opinion that a lot of what we've learned about sex has been toxic, has been unhealthy, and been destructive. Destructive to our female counterparts, destructive to our communities, and also destructive to ourselves. So the book is written in order to explore some of the psychological, the relational, the behavioral impact that the conditioning that we have gone through has had on the way we view sex, the way we view women, the way we view relationships, and the way we view ourselves as men. But tonight we specifically are going to be talking about the hurt we cause. What happens after we go through this conditioning, the lessons that we learn, and the behaviors that we display. What's the impact on the people that are in our lives, the relationships that we get involved with, the children that we have, and the community in general. So tonight I have some very special guests with me, my brothers, Mr. Warmer Young and Mr. Nathaniel Legay. So please go ahead and introduce yourself, and we're going to jump right into the conversation.
Nathaniel, go ahead. You got it.
How you doing? My name is Nathaniel. I'm a small business owner, serial entrepreneur, and man who's out here trying to figure out how this dating world works. Go ahead, my brother.
All right. I'm Warren. I'm a consultant, a therapist, an educator, and just trying to do what I can to make the world a little bit better.
Okay. Brothers trying to be humble. They do a lot. They do a lot more than that. They do a lot more than that. But I appreciate the humbleness. So we're not gonna be here long. So I'm gonna just jump right to it.
Let's do it.
My first question, when it comes to the sexual miseducation of Black men, how would you describe the overall education that us as Black men receive? I guess I should say in America. How would you describe what we learn, the type of education we receive when it comes to sex?
It was pretty bad. It's from when I say pretty bad, I mean from all aspects of it. The mechanics of it, just what was required, all of that stuff. Like we had to learn. I feel like it's one of the few places that you have to learn on the fly and from hearsay. Like there's no class, there's a home economics class that teaches you how to to cook. There's a shop class that teaches you how to do woodworking. There are all of these different classes, but sex and all of those things is not something that people really. There's no real guidance like that. It's specifically that I can think of. There was any real guidance like that, but that's just me.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
I agree. Yeah, personally, I agree with a lot of that. I think the reality is, sex isn't something that we talk about a lot. It's such a common and prevalent part of our culture, and we don't talk about it, right? It's one of those things that I think we hear about, we happen upon, we understand that it's an important thing, and then we do our own research and our own homework, and we explore it. And if depending on when you start, if we're children, if we're younger, fumbling around with sex, you don't really know what's going on. You're just doing a thing, and then if that's your foray into it, and that's the way you kind of learn and understand it for the next 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years of your life, the education is pretty lacking, I'll say.
Yeah. When you say 20, 40,
I think
50 years, that's a long time.
Yeah.
You can have sex
I
forever.
feel like it's
Go ahead, Nick.
I feel like there are books on relationships, but there are very few books on, or just like seminars that just discuss sex therapy, all of those different things like that. I'm sure that there are people out there who do that. And even in getting ready for this, in prepping for tonight, I was, looking through and trying to find some people who actually, who were talking about that. And to be honest with you, one of the things that I found was that it's a lot of, like, as far as sex therapists and the mechanics of sex, it's a lot of misinformation out there. I had a conversation with a young lady not too long ago. Like, most men don't know the basic anatomy of the female genitals. Like, they wouldn't know what to call it. They know what it looks like. They can spot it, but they don't know what the actual names are.
Yeah. So in the book, I write a piece where it starts to talk about just like the origins or the birth of us as young men or as men, and how when we're born, our parents take on the task of teaching us so many different things. They teach us how to talk, teach us how to crawl, teach us how to walk, teach us how to say yes and please, and use a spoon, use a fork. But there's one lesson that is always skipped. And as I interviewed several men for the book, it was always the lesson on sex. So as you said, Nate, and as you said, Warren, like, it's still a very taboo topic in our community, even though we know everybody's having it. I mean, we know young boys are having it because the babies are being born all over the place. You've seen, if you go into the hospitals, or if you go into the clinics, you see teenage boys infected with all types of STDs and STIs and things of that nature. So people having sex is clear, but why we still not talking about it, and why we still not educating our young men on sex in a proper way of managing our sexuality? So that takes me into like the next question. If our parents, or there's no real structured way of teaching us about sex, what are we learning, and who's teaching it? As black men, as black boys, who's teaching it, and what are we learning?
I think who's teaching it is we're teaching each other. I think we're learning from the media. I think we're learning from the pressure to perform, right? We're just learning from this impetus to be great, to be, powerful, to be liked, to be desirable. So, it's not even like it's a direct lesson, but it's more of this concept of, if I do this thing, people will feel that I'm strong, or I'm attractive, or I'm a good catch. So I think we're learning more by the idea of what it could bring, which is interesting because it's not even like it's a tangible thing that we're learning, or a place where we're learning from. I think it's more this motivation to be a certain way, or perform a certain way.
Oh yeah, we're learning from. I myself, I know that I learn most of what I know from friends, classmates, just that the information. I was a voracious reader, so even as a kid, because I remember. I was one of I've read the book, Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About Sex But Were Afraid to Ask. And I remember that was an enlightening book. I still to this day don't know where I got it from, but I remember it was a hardbound book. I don't know if it was something that, but it was a hardbound book, and it was for the time, because you're talking about like, oh gosh, that had to be late 80s, early 90s or something like that. When I got a hold of that book, it was a great tool to learn a bunch of stuff, but I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't actually, like, it gave me like I think that was the first time I actually saw the word clitoris. And I didn't know what it was. But it was saying, I remember the book saying, this is really important. but I had no idea what that was, and like I said, thank God I ran into that book, but there was just so many things that we just don't know. And from talking to my friends and stuff like that, because it's not like your friends are gonna give you the bad stories. They're not going to tell you, because you learn, like in life, you learn. I know from doing, from being a business owner, you learn more from your mistakes than you do from the things you do well. Dudes are not going to tell you the time that they messed around and they messed something up, or it didn't go well, or how how the experience went bad, horribly wrong. They don't tell you that stuff. They might tell you, yeah, I got over there and then I smashed. And that gives you no information as you know, as a secondary person. So it's just it's interesting, and I'm really happy that you write in this book, because you know, to kind of sort of detangle some of the myths that are out there. Thank you, brother.
You're muted, AB.
No, thank you, brother, for just adding that piece. And speaking of the book, I wrote a piece in the book where it kind of speaks of my personal experience, like the foundation of my sexual miseducation. And I was very detailed on how and when the first time I actually was introduced to sex, I should say. Because of course I heard about it, you know, people talk about it in school, but the first time that I actually seen this done was watching porn. You know, I mean, I can remember the day like it was yesterday. I had to be like 10 or 11 years old. And my mom was calling me into the house, said, "Hey, where's your brother? Go get your brother." I don't know where he is. He must be down at his friend's house. Go get him. So I go a couple of doors down, knock on the door. Nobody answered. The door was unlocked. I walk upstairs, knocked on the door that they usually, in the room they usually hang out. When I knocked on the door, it opened. Of course, you know what they was watching. Right. They told me sit down and shut up. Don't tell nobody we watching it. So that's exactly what I did. That's exactly what I did. And, you know, I had to be like 10 or 11 at the time. So, no, you know, 10 or 11, and you see, you know, a woman on the screen getting flipped and twisted and cursed
at. It's like fifth grade. Smacked. So that's like fifth grade. Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, so
there's no real context about what's going on. Just like, are they wrestling? Are they fighting? Like, I don't understand what's actually happening and where they're clothes.
Something was going on, and it grabbed my interest. So that's like the foundation of my sexual education. Like, that's like my first time actually seeing it, you know, occur. Aside from hearing it, and of course, then there's the music and things like that. As I spoke to the men that I interviewed, they had very similar experiences. Their foundation was through porn, it was through magazines, through the internet, through their peers, like some of you guys says, and some of them even said it was through abuse, through sexual abuse. You know, getting touched by their babysitters, or older aunts or cousins. So just our introduction to sex can be very deviant at times, which leads to this sexual miseducation system that we all are stuck in. So my next question when it comes to that is, how would you say that this miseducation about sex received has affected women, affected relationships, affected the community as a whole? What's the impact of the stuff that we're learning?
Wow.
I've got something quickly, Native, if you're okay with it. So
Good.
I think part of the way it impacts relationships and communities and, you know, just kind of everything is it informs the reasons why we do what we do, and it informs the ways that we do what we do, right? So if I'm thinking that I'm you know, trying to get this lady, and, you know, if all that it's about is me thinking that I need to show how dominant I am, show how important I am, how significant I am, and I use sex, the relationship that comes from that may be one that's rooted in this feeling of my superiority and her inferiority, right? And if we're setting up this power dynamic where there isn't this feeling of an ability for the woman to contribute, you know, because it's about a sexually driven or sexually motivated relationship, I think it shapes the way everything looks moving forward. So let's say we have kids, the kids may see, you know, mommy and daddy kind of acting in this very different, you know, unequal way. You know, mommy doesn't get to say much, you know, daddy's the one that's kind of in control and asserting this power. And the community, if if we have kids and the kids are all seeing similar things, it sets the stage for what future generations are going to do. So I think it can have this ripple effect of, if we see these inaccurate or unhelpful teachings, I think it can color the way the future is painted.
I kind of come at it from a different angle. As far as like sex became a thing where it was something that you were hunting for. It became a destination, as opposed to like the relationship and the growing. Like as a grown man, I know you're supposed to be, trying to grow together to build something with with somebody that you have a rapport with. But as a young man, and building off just the desire to have sex, it was more so how you pursue a woman. And it wasn't necessarily trying to find an equal, it was trying to find a way to get a woman to give you sex. And it was for me, it was a manipulation. It was always about trying to figure out how to get her to, and not from a, and the reason I say manipulation as opposed to lying, because there's a difference. A lot of dudes will be like, look, I ain't never lied to her, but you used, you dangled certain things out there as possibilities that you really had no intention of fulfilling, just because you wanted to have sex with this person. And so because it became such a destination, it became a goal, it changed the way that, it changes the way that you look at your partner. I had a conversation the other day where I was talking about, there was a girl that I was like the way that I think now as a grown man in my 40s, as opposed to the way that I thought in my teens and 20s. If I'm having a conversation with a woman and in my mind, I don't think that I'm going to have, it's not going to lead to sex, why am I having this conversation? That thought process, like, being able to have a conversation with this person just because they're a person, as opposed to they're this object to be, or this object to be conquered. That whole mindset, it comes from, I guess what I'm trying to say is that sex and relationship were decoupled for me. I don't know about anybody else, but for me, sex and relationship had become decoupled.
No, that's good stuff from both of y'all, and I could relate to the story, and I could I can identify with the story as well. And just to add on what you're saying about the way we start to view women, I know, as for me and for a lot of guys that I know, sex was one of the ways we measured our manhood. It was the way that we value ourselves. So if you was getting a lot of girls, getting a lot of women, having a lot of sex, that raised your status, your social status on the totem pole.
Right.
So after a while, like you said, Nate, women just become sexual objects. They're just like a end to get to a means.
To an end. Yeah.
Because they I just.
But why did it? But the question becomes. But the question becomes, why did it become why did it raise your status? Because there was the mystery behind it. It was always like, oh my gosh, he did this magical thing a lot. He got these amount of girls, all of these girls to give him to give him sex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and usually the casualty of that is the women, because we're just
Right.
using them as a pawn in our game to gain the status. No matter what the feeling is, we're trying to gain status. We're trying to be popular. We're trying to be accepted. And some guys might use other ways, and other guys might use, hey, the more women I get, the higher
Right.
my status is, and as a result, women become sexual objects, and you abandon the relationship and the intimacy and the connection, because you're not even looking at her for that. You're looking
Right.
at her to raise your status.
Right.
I would disagree slightly with that opinion, only in
I
that.
mean, my experience.
Oh, no. I'm just saying. Okay, well, all right. So I would say that as young men, women learn about they learn about intimacy early on. They learn about, through their friendship groups and stuff like that. We as men are focused so much on the sex that we don't learn about all the rest of it. And I think that puts us at a serious disadvantage when it comes time for relationship.
Nate,
there's a steeper learning curve for men.
If I
You
can,
saying, brother?
say one
Yeah.
thing quickly to that. I think what may be coming up more there is just how historically and how societally women intimacy looks different between men and women, just generally speaking, right? So I think kind of to your point, women hear about the more, I guess, visible outward forms of intimacy. Women will hug in public, women can hold hands, women can dance together, and no one thinks twice about it. And men doing that in America, it's a completely different thing. And I think we learn about intimacy, but I think men, kind of to your point, I think men's understanding of intimacy in that way ends up being something very different. And the way we kind of cover that ground is by being physical, right? Because I think everybody wants these human interactions. As babies, we need this touch, this like skin to skin, this human contact. And if men aren't allowed to, hold hands or, comfortably hug in public or just show some kind of physical affection, the way men have historically known to get it out is by sex. And that's really this thing that I think men don't think about, but that's almost like this underlying known way to kind of check that box in their lives.
Yeah. Just to add on to that, there's a piece in the book where I write that Disney did a great job with teaching young girls how to fantasize about relationships, and pornography did a great job with teaching men how to fantasize about relationships. So we're being taught about relationships from two different places.
Very different.
So what we see as intimacy and what we see as closeness is very different. So I guess the task is, how do we move more in the middle? Right. So both needs are met.
Yeah.
And I think maybe talking about this miseducation piece is a start to that. Is a start to that.
Yes.
So
definitely. I mean,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, I was just gonna say that I definitely believe that this miseducation thing is really, really important, because I mean, it just the whole, you were talking about like when you were younger and, pornography being your first experience or understanding what sex was. I mean, I think myself, I was thinking about that as well. Like, being a kid You know, I remember my best friend in high school was this Asian kid, and our first experience, we sat back and we found his brother's porno stash, and that was my first introduction to like the female body. And that's just, you know, and for that to go forward,
yeah,
you know, there has to be a link somewhere. I don't know if it's teaching a class. I don't know if it's just we as parents being able to be more open and honest with our children as far as, you know, like
we gonna get to the parts. We're gonna get to the solutions. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there.
I guess what I'm asking, I guess what I was about to say is that I'm thinking from the standpoint of women have tutorials and they go to gynecologists and they have their mothers who teach them how to use feminine hygiene products and stuff like that. But there's nothing like that for men.
Yeah. And what's even sadder, if I can add to that, what's even sadder is that we don't only have something that teaches when a lot of the times when we hit that puberty stage and we're having the wet dreams or a young boy starts to masturbate in our community, a young man is ridiculed for that. Like he's not taught on, you know, what's going on with your body, you know, the power that you possess and what you're starting to produce. Boys don't talk about, hey, I just had a wet dream, and what is this that come out my body? If you did, you could be the butt of somebody's jokes. Guys don't talk about masturbating because you could be ridiculed for it. So it's not only that we don't get the proper education, we can be shamed for something that's so natural
in our community by the people that we're feeling closest to. Yeah. Yep, it's true.
Okay. As a sidebar, I do remember we were sitting there. I was in mind you, I'm in South Carolina. I remember I was in South Carolina, and one of my homeboys, he's now deceased. He was on the football team, D tackle. He was like big dude, and we were making. Somebody was doing just what you're talking about. They was making jokes about. You're talking about making jokes about another kid masturbating, and my man stood up and was like, "Wait a minute." We're at the lunch table. This was the funniest thing. We at the lunch table, and he's sitting up there talking about, hey, wait a minute. I masturbate. He said, and I know I ain't the only one.
Yeah. But
and slowly but surely, everybody just kind of slowly raised their hands. Like, it was the funniest thing ever.
Right.
But
strength in numbers, right? I mean, it's like somebody said something like, me too. Well, that happened to me, right? It's something more comfortable. Like you have somebody taking the lead for it. Yeah.
Wow. I forgot what I was going to say.
But it was one of those things.
But I think one thing you also said that's scary for me, because I have a 14-year-old son. You was talking about how you and your friend in high school found his brother's stash. Back then, you had to find a stash in order to.
Oh yeah.
You had to find a stash. And you get that one tape. You hold on to that tape and circulate it around like it's the Menace to Society tape or something. Well, but these days, there's no stash.
You don't have to go far.
Long, you're getting downloaded different scenes, different preferences. Like the same devices that they're talking on, gaming on, like they can find porn, and it's anything you want to watch.
Right.
So it's so dangerous now, and that kind of takes me to my next question: what do we teach the next generation of Black men about managing their sexuality in a healthy way, and what do we teach them about the hurt that we cause, as far as hey, there's somebody on the other side of these behaviors that we're doing. It's not just you, and that's not sowing your wild oats and you can walk away. There's somebody that's being affected.
Right.
You know, it's not, maybe we don't care or we just don't stay around to see if they're being affected, but there's another human being on this other side of this. What do we teach young men, the next generation of men, about that?
I think part of it is that
Go ahead, bro.
I think a bigger part is that we have to start early, right? I mean, just kind of like how we're recognizing that the conversations aren't happening almost at all, and we're finding out about sex and learning about sex and sexuality accidentally or in ways that aren't going to be, you know, informative enough to kind of help us make great decisions. But I think we nip this in the bud by starting these conversations earlier on, where we figure out what we need as men, as the adults in the communities, to have these conversations, right? It may have been something that we weren't comfortable with or we found were awkward and kind of tough to have, but we have to recognize, as the people that are in the positions to do the things, we have to be able to say, all right, this conversation isn't one I necessarily want to have, and I know it's important, and we have to have it. So my young man, let's have this talk. You know, your body's going to go through changes, and you know, I wonder if we can take a cue from women, right? In the same way that women learn and women teach young girls about kind of the changes in their their physical development and emotional development. We kind of look to them and say, well, how do you do that, right? Because clearly we haven't been great at getting it right. So if they can model for us how to feel more confident doing it, I think that'd be great. But either way, I think it needs to start early and just start getting some of this appropriate messaging out. What you got?
Definitely. I feel like, and you know, I'm full disclosure, I'm a girl dad. So, but I feel like as men, we need to be honest. You know, be and not have and not be quite so afraid to have these conversations.
Yeah.
To be able to, you know, to be able to say, okay, this is your body, you know, call it what it is, call it a penis, you know, call them testicles, you know, and I know, you know, or if you don't want to, or whatever, you know, whatever the vernacular, you might want to call them that. You know, they tell them outside of this house, they may call them XYZ, but in this house, this is what we're going to call it. You know, and just break down what needs to happen, because I just don't think that we're being honest with these kids. At least I know I don't think that definitely I don't think that I think that a lot of things were hidden because there's a lot of shame attached to sex. You know, even still, which is really crazy to me, that in the year 2023, you know, where sex is, you know, literally at our, viewing sex is literally at our fingertips at all times. It's never further away than arm distance from us at all times. There's still a taboo about having that conversation. True. That just sounds so crazy to me, but that's the way it is.
Yeah. I agree. I agree with what both you brothers are saying. I think that's some very important conversations we need to have, and they do need to start early. Like I often talk about, like my experience with my son. Like I started talking to him about sex at a very early age, and it was, of course, it was age appropriate. And when I say talk about sex, I'm just talking about like what you're saying, Nate. Let's talk about your body parts. You know, let me teach you what's a good touch and a bad touch. You know, and who to go to if you get touched, and you need to have boundaries as well, and don't touch others. Like all of that is like the beginning of sex education. And then of course, as you grow and as you get older, the conversation will become more mature. but we need to start early because we can't wait till they turn 13, 14. Then all of a sudden,
you can't stop once the door's open. You can't stop anybody from running through.
We can't
Pornhub,
wait.
Because Pornhub already has their hooks into them.
Oh yeah. And to be honest, a lot of the guys that I interviewed, they was well into their 30s, and they still had not had that conversation with their fathers or any responsible adults. So these things was just we pick up these things along the way, the way we get taught. I think we definitely need to start teaching young boys new ways of measuring their manhood as well, new ways of valuing themselves as well, so they don't have to measure themselves with sex or money or what they do on the ball field. We can start teaching them things about character, integrity, honesty,
intrinsic qualities and attributes.
Yeah. So I think that's very important. You were trying to say something, Nate?
My question to both of you guys was, did your father or uncle or some male figure in your life actually have that conversation with you?
Nope. How about you?
At all.
Right.
I'm 40. I'm 46 years old. I've never had that conversation with my father.
People talk about the birds and the bees. I don't even know if that's an actual conversation, right? I think we've heard it's like a unicorn, right? Like it's a mythical conversation. But I don't even know if it actually happens.
Yeah. Like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster. It's like, I've never had, like, I didn't even know like I said, if it weren't for that book, I would not know that there was a such thing as the female orgasm.
Yeah. And
that's crazy.
Yeah. So Nate, you mentioned being a girl dad, and that's kind of takes me to my next question.
Yes.
If you have a daughter, a niece, a little girl cousin, or whatever, we know that this sexual miseducation is still going on. We're starting the conversation, but it's a hard fight, and it's a huge fight that I'm trying to take on, or that we're trying to take on. So what will you teach the young girls in your life about guarding their hearts and guarding their bodies as they face, the brothers, the young men that's still going through this sexual miseducation system? What do you teach them? What do you tell them?
The biggest thing for me, and mind you, my daughter's very young. So it's not like I'm not going to sit back and be like, pulling out charts of, how the penis works. I'm not there yet. But the biggest thing for me is just trying to teach her how to assess people. For their good or bad, their intentions, all of that stuff. You trying to get her to understand, how people work first. Everything that somebody says, may not, just because somebody said something doesn't always make it true. Some people can tell you that they, and just little things like that, just so she understands that when everybody who tells you that they love you or they say that they care about you, that's not always the case. Just the understanding that actions mean more. And that they're really important, that you back up the actions. I mean, you back up the words with the actions, and you see that, especially with men. Men will show you what it is that they really want. If somebody really wants you, if they're interested in you, they'll show it to you. So just basically trying to get her to understand and assess people. That's the biggest thing. Who is your real friend? Just like little things like this. Who is your real friend? Is this person, is this person that you're talking to really your friend? Even in a non-sexual way. Just who are these people, females, who you're talking to, and just how to interact with the world. I think that's a really important lesson.
If I have a thought, kind of related to that and a little bit different.
Okay.
I think it's important to teach, the young girls in our lives, the females in our lives, and everybody. Figure out what's important to you, right? What matters to you? What's going to be the most meaningful thing to you? Because the truth is, if our daughters don't know what they want, they may be open to receive anything that they get, right? So I think my hope is that there's this charge and this push to educate everybody as much as we can with the things that are going to be important. And I think in this case, it's figuring out what really matters to them, right? So like I would teach, the young ladies in my life, figure out what you need, right? Don't let some person tell you what's most important to you, because they don't know you like you know yourself, right? So if you know what you want, and you feel confident and comfortable in stepping up and saying what you need and what you want and advocating for yourself, if you know how to do that, I think you have to worry less about trying to figure out who somebody else is, because the truth is we'll never know who someone else is, right? We'll know what they show us, we'll know what crumbs they may leave, but we'll never have the full picture. And we can arm ourselves by being fully secure and sure-footed in who we are and what we want to do, and kind of use that as our armor to kind of protect ourselves from whatever comes. So that's what I would teach the younger female population, like I said, and everybody. But I think that'd be a way to try to help them guard their hearts and guard their bodies.
Yeah, well, that's so important. That self-awareness and self-love, self-discovery journey is so important to knowing who and what to let in and what to let out of your life.
Right. I think.
Yeah, you got to learn yourself too. Got to allow you got to learn who you are and what's important to you. Like, I know you guys are familiar with that book, the love languages and stuff like that.
5 love languages.
Yeah. Learning what your love language is and stuff like that. Just, and how you interact with that, and just like I said, just learning yourself.
Yeah.
Is important.
So as we wrap up, I have one more question for you guys. As we spoke about the hurt we cause with our sexual miseducation throughout our lives, and we've all spoke about some of the things that has influenced the way we view sex in the past, but we're all grown adults now and things have changed. But if you can go back to the past and you can come face to face with someone that was hurt, that was damaged by one of your unhealthy sexual habits that you've been conditioned to perform or to act out, what would you say to that young lady? Or what would you say to the person that was hurt by it? I'm going to turn my mic off on that one.
So for me, I would apologize. I would apologize and own up to the fact that I didn't know, right? I can't make any excuses for what I did or didn't know, but I can recognize that I didn't know, and anything I did was out of a place of ignorance. And I can sincerely apologize and hope that my character would be able to speak for who I actually am and not the mistakes I've made.
You done?
Yes, sir.
I don't want to step on your toes.
No, sir. You got it.
For me personally, this was the question that I saw on your list that gave me pause. I don't think that there are a lot of people out there. There were not a lot of women out there who I think have anger towards me, but I do think, or resentment towards me. But I do think that there are women out there who I may have not contributed to their life's journey. As far as helping them to feel secure in relationships. And I would definitely have to say that I'm sorry about that. Would definitely have to say that I'm sorry about that. And just the idea, like I said, because I don't, definitely that would be the thing for me, was that I'm sorry that I did not have the tools to understand what that could do to a person. Yeah. And I know how messed up that can be when you feel you're in a place where you don't feel, especially not understanding what I know now about women and the feeling of being secure. I understand that what I was doing was really wrong. It wasn't mean-spirited. It wasn't like, I wasn't like, a lot of guys out here, and, this is me qualifying right now, but it wasn't like I was out here trying to, making these women feel terrible or doing all these, but I definitely was not, I definitely was not giving them the feeling that what we were in was a solid and stable place. And and I know now that if, because I was just in a lot, because I was young, you were interested in sex. It was a goal. It was a thing that you wanted to do. And,
yeah.
And you can't, and that feeling of instability, it sticks with you. Mm-hmm. It sticks with you. It lingers. It becomes a pattern. A pattern that other people might exploit. Yep. It's crazy. And I'm just sorry that I contributed to that in somebody's life. Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
I asked that last question because that actually happened to me. I had an opportunity to come face to face with someone that, I hurt and damaged. I tell a story. I was just on my daily jog one day and running down on the drive on Kelly Drive here in Philly. And I run into a young lady that I used to deal with maybe like 10 years prior to this time. Wow. So we start to, we exchange greetings. Hey, how you doing? Then we start to catch each other up on, what's transpired in our lives for the last 10 years. And, I told her, hey, I'm in the mental health field. I'm a therapist now. I'm working on this and that. And she tells me what she's doing in her career. She tells me about her daughter and how my daughter's 12 now. I'm like, wow, time really flies. And then she starts to tell me how she's also involved in a mental health field, but as a client, that she was currently, seeking therapy. And she said she was seeking therapy to try to overcome, feelings of depression, feelings of low self-esteem and inadequacy, based on all the hard and damaging relationships she's been in.
Wow.
And so, I said, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you feel better. And then before we walked away, she told me, yeah, and one of those people were you.
Oh,
I didn't know what to say say or do at the moment. That hit me like a ton of bricks. Because something that I thought was so casual, something that I felt like, hey, I'm just having fun. I'm just sowing my wild oats. There's no consequence. I could just come over once or twice a week and, we have sex and I'll walk away. Something that was so casual to me really damaged her, really had an effect on her self-esteem, on her image, on the way she saw herself. And at that point, I realized how, as Black men, and I think you kind of hinted to this, Nate, like, it not only me, I can only think of all the other guys that might have done this to her, and the type of carnage that we create in the lives of not only women, but in the lives of children. When children are born and we just walk away like there's no responsibility, all due to the miseducation, the sexual miseducation that we receive as men. We don't see the importance and the value of some of these things. So I came face to face with somebody that I hurt, and I had to apologize. That's all I can do. That's all I could do at the time. I had to apologize for the part I played, just like Nate was saying. But that really opened my eyes to the things that we do, the way we manage our sexuality, the way we look at sex, and was conditioned to look at sex as Black men, and the effect that it has on our community as a whole. So that was a tough one, and I always like to tell that story because that's one of the things that kind of influenced me writing this book. Just realizing like the impact that what I learned, the impact and the hurt that it can have in other people. Yeah. So Nate, you still there? Because your picture is frozen. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you. So so we're gonna wrap up the conversation, man. Great conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was real good. That was real good.
No, thanks for being a part of this discussion.
But I'm not gonna let you get away with this. Hold on. Happy birthday to you, sir.
Thank you. One year older. 1 year older. Hopefully 1 year wiser too.
Right.
You're getting better, man. You're getting better.
I'm trying. So I don't know if you guys is really into social media. Is there anything you want people to kind of follow you or things you got coming up, stuff like that? I know some of my brothers, they like to keep a low profile.
Nothing for me. You may see me out in public.
I have my. You can always follow me on Instagram at Palletportation, PALLETPORTATION, like teleportation, but pallets.
Mm-hmm.
It's just chronicling, being a small business owner. Just my thoughts on, how all of that works and stuff like that. Mm. So if you want to follow me, you can follow me on that. That's my IG tag.
Great. Thank you.
And the name of my business.
Nice. So you can follow me two places. You can follow me on Facebook if you're watching on Facebook at AB Bracewell, or you can follow my YouTube channel, The Sexual Miseducation of Black Men in America. This book will be dropping on Saturday, March 18th. You can actually pre-order now on Amazon. And I'm having the book launch on March 18th, and the book will be available on Amazon and my website, readyforrelationship.com, on March 18th. I'm telling you, the book, I'm hoping that it touches somebody. If it, like people always say, if it touches one man or one boy, then I think it's done its job. I'm hoping that it touches many more. If we stay connected as brothers like we did tonight, I'm sure the word will spread, and we can be a big influence. So
Absolutely.
just want to thank you, brother, for joining the conversation.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
everyone for watching, for the comments. Please watch the replay. This was a great discussion. It was a great discussion. So please, have a good night and God bless.
All right.
All right. You take it easy, boss.
All right.
I'm smiling. You can't see it. I'm frozen.